Simon
Hi.
Hunter here from the Hunter Where It Be It podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Well, both you and your black cat.
Yeah, he just tear my mouse down from my keyboard. He can't find it.
The cat attacks the digital mouse.
It's very it's beyond our irony, but I can't really find it. So it's a good start.
Well, if your cat does happen to retrieve
sorry,
it,
Ryman, go ahead.
you can let us know. But look, hey, thanks very much, Lars, for joining me today.
Yeah.
From Sweden, and I know you as the Swedish fire nerd, but perhaps could I ask you to sort of fully introduce yourself for the benefits of any listeners?
I'm Lars Axelsson. I'm now a former firefighter and battalion officer. I worked for about 12 years in the fire service, and then gradually I started becoming a fire nerd and started doing teaching. Fire behavior and firefighting sort of took me out all over the world to do the teaching, and I made it into what I do. I got sort of a bit fed up with what I was doing at the fire service, all the day-to-day of running a fire service or a fire shift and so on. And now I spend most of my time teaching or building live fire facilities, mostly in Sweden, but I travel the world when I have the time.
Very nice. And I know you were in the UK relatively recently, Lars. Anything interesting or exciting when you were over here?
Well, it's always interesting to travel. It's always interesting to talk to other nerds about fire and so on. But I've been to two trips fairly recently. I've done some courses and lectures on firefighting, and it's fun to see because there's a revival, I think, in the UK about the interest for being good firefighters and questioning about why are we doing what we're doing and how should we go forward. And so it's interesting to see and very fun to see. The UK has such a fantastic history of firefighting. And so, no, it's an interesting place to be in. But also I see it as I call the UK the world championships, the world champions of documents and formal procedures and so on. And it has a big downside of making everything too rigid that when you want to change it, it's really hard because you set it in stone. It's there are very few things that you should be that certain of to put it in stone. So it's hard to change the system. It's very hard.
Yeah, that's something that we all come up against sometimes. Yeah, I guess a fairly visible eye-catching thing is you're a firefighter with a pretty significant beard, and
Yes.
that would not work in the UK.
It would work, but it wouldn't work due to laws. It would work practically, but not due to laws. Yeah.
Yeah, so you obviously aren't particularly inhibited by it in your operational work.
No, but the to be fair, EU is trying to force down some laws in Sweden too, which there's this big debate now about fit testing, where because of EU regulations. So the bureaucrats are trying their best at destroying my beard, but I'm very much trying to resist it.
Resolutely resisting.
Yeah, I'm strongly resisting. So we'll see. As of now, it's not an issue, at least. Neither practically, neither regulatory.
Lars, we spoke before this conversation, and I know that something that struck me is you clearly have a passion for an area of firefighting that is very close to my heart, and it's this issue of firefighting cancer, contamination, removal of contaminants, methods by which contamination gets into the PPE ensemble and onto the skin and so forth. And so could I just ask you to share with listeners, how did this issue first hit home? What's sort of happening in Sweden today in respect of it? I mean, I know that Sweden certainly has been seen as a bit of a leader on these issues in some respects, at least. And could you talk to that subject?
Sure. When I started, 2002, 2000, I did my civilian military service, which is coming back, by the way. But I did that as an airport firefighter, and I remember back then, and then when I did my sort of basic training for the municipal fire brigade training, there wasn't not one syllabus were mentioned that smoke was long-term dangerous and so on. There wasn't one syllabus. I didn't wash my BA. We had basic training it's 2 years in Sweden. It's a 2-year program, and I don't think I washed my BA more than twice.
Okay.
It was not because necessarily. Well, there was a badge of honor being dirty for sure. It should be seen as dirty, but it was mostly as laziness. Nobody required you to wash it, so you didn't. It was just kept dirty and was dirty. With that said, so 20, 25 years ago, it wasn't an issue at all. It wasn't even on the radar. I started the fire service full time, and I think it was about like 20 years ago, it started to become a conversation. For instance, I never had one personally in my close, my station and so on that got
Okay.
cancer. It wasn't an issue personally. I didn't care. But gradually I started becoming more interested in firefighting as a firefighting aspect of it. And you start to hear rumors, sort of like, no, not rumors. You start to hear people talking about it and here and there. It wasn't anything specific. And then there was some more scientific studies started to come out about the link between firefighting and cancer. And I at least try to be, I think we are all emotional creatures, but I try to be rational, and I started looking at seeing that there are at least at that point, there was this, not maybe cause and causation was hard to prove, but it was at least a correlation between people having cancer and stuff like, and just looking at it, go like, oh, holy crap, it makes a lot of sense. Now we know that, PM 2.5 particles are very detrimental to your health long term. Like just simple things from tires on the road and combustion smoke and smog. We know that sort of be long term. We knew that way before. So it's not hard to make the estimated guess that this is probably not good for you. And then it became sort of just like, okay, I love what I'm doing. I love, I fire training and in firefighting. I starting to have kids, and go like, well, should I be in there for long term? And if I'm going to be a long term and do what I do, I need to, make this an issue. I need to understand it more. I need to, be better at doing it for myself, protect myself. And then on top of that, just purely egotistical that I want to protect myself, it became because 10 years probably started the outcome was started to become, oh, we can't do carbonaceous training. We can't use real smoke for training. And that's where it really became also a passion of mine, because I saw carbonaceous training as essential to building good firefighters. Otherwise, we will increase other risks. So to me, it became a trade-off. Go like, well, we can't just take away carbonaceous training because we do not have an alternative. So that was not an issue. So if fire departments are starting to take away carbonaceous training for health reasons, and inadvertently increasing other risks, which is my definite opinion, that is not an option that I see is beneficial. So I need to work on it, both from an egotistical perspective and also because basically I want firefighters to have good training, and good training requires carbonaceous, and carbonaceous training requires good procedures and gear to be able to
where is
stay
that, Lars?
healthy.
Where is that now at this point in time in your area or with your brigade, or even sort of in Sweden as a country? Where has that got to now? Is it completely banned in Sweden, or where are you?
No. I would say it's the opposite. The gas buildings are quickly going out of fashion. I mean, they're still building them, and they still have them, but it's quickly going away. I think more departments realizing that we're building crap firefighters, and we're not happy with that.
Okay.
So definitely carbonaceous is coming back, but on the back end of that, I think that Sweden is also looking at other countries. A lot of times, Sweden has come a long way of building better procedures and gear and so on in terms of protecting people when we do carbonaceous training. You go some places, you go like, holy crap, this should be obvious. I think it's my definite, otherwise I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. It's my definite belief that if you do have sort of decent procedures and so on when you do training, that it's a manageable risk to do it. Just like everything else we do, we are risk managing. We do risk trade-offs. So we said Sweden is both in terms of dealing with the cancer issue, or the health concern of getting better, and also I think the trend is towards getting, well, what I would consider back to better training, which is, or at least carbonaceous is one part of it.
And in terms of protecting and self-protecting, what are your go-tos in terms of technology, fibers? How do you protect yourself from the skin out?
Well, I usually start it the other way. I usually start from the as far as out as I can, because I think that's the more logical way of doing it. Meaning that for me, it starts with like tactics and strategies, like in firefighting, and in training, like anything from like which is not dictated on reducing exposure, but it's a very nice add-on. Go straight to the fire, kill it, and ventilate, which is better for the victim. It's better for us. Meaning, so in terms of tactics, for instance, that we need to deal with the fire as fast as possible, spend as little time in the smoke at real fires as possible, which means getting the people in less amount of time in smoke. So stop doing like the UK is, still doing the M.B.E shuffle and standing up in smoke, and a lot of nonsense going on in the UK still, which the UK fire service needs to deal with, because you're prolonging. One aspect is you're prolonging the time inside, by standing up and being inside smoke for far too long. So you increase other risks. But so it's about tactics and strategies, meaning, and that started for me before that, and started switching towards, we want to, kill the fire as fast as possible, ventilate. That's better for everyone. But it also, like for training, even when I started doing that switch, where training was that, no, it becomes too easy if you can open the window. So just go in there and crawl for 20 minutes. That's a good exercise. No, you should just go in, kill the fire, ventilate, and get rid of it during training. So also training, you spend less time in smoke, even though, because you're actually, you're trying to train on the procedures and methods you want. So I think that's one of the aspects you really have to bring in before you get there. And then you have before you get to like what you actually wear and so on, then it's procedures, like how you don't stay in smoke if you don't have to, wear your breathing apparatus, if you're in smoke, stand upwind, don't be don't be inside the container if you don't have to. When you're doing the overhaul, use your B.A, like procedure based. When you get undressed, don't touch yourself everywhere and cross-contaminate with your fingers, have dirty gear in one place, clean gear, like this so much that's procedure based and doesn't cost a lot of times any money and so on. That's the second biggest piece, and that's where I see where I'm most surprised most fire departments haven't got to, because either ignorance or just people are lazy. Like they just only do these two options, and when they coincide, that's when you get really bad stuff happening. People lazy and ignorant. So it is. I mean, I struggle all the time with being lazy, like doing it. It's just a constant battle. I'm just going to do this shortly. So I go in with dirty gear in some place you shouldn't be with dirty gear and so on. And you're uncomfortable and cold. I'll probably staying my smelly gear for this half hour instead of taking off because it's cold. Like, so it's like lazy and comfortness. Now you can trade off a little bit by that by having procedures and of course good facilities where you can go in and clean yourself and warm up and change your underwear and so on. But procedures is so big. So that's the second part.
And in Sweden, Lars, in terms of access to washing facilities for the staff, for the PPE, is it readily available? Are people washing their PPE, once a year, twice a year, after every carbonaceous event? What's kind of normal, would you say, in your area or Sweden more generally?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm generalizing here, but yeah, we've gone a long way from how it used to be. Again, when I started, we didn't wash our gear, and maybe 15 years ago, there was started to become at least washing the gear regularly. Like if that was once a year or once a month, depending on the need and the individual, maybe. But now it's like every time if it's dirty, it's washed all the time. Underwear every time. I was actually, and this started like 10 years ago. You wouldn't generally, as a Swedish firefighter, you wouldn't like have, go to station wear and then go out on the fire call, come back and don't shower and change your station wear. And I was going to classes, and I still go to classes and conferences. People go like travel and they go do smoke diving in their station wear, for instance, and then they ride home in it. I'm like, but like, have you learned nothing? Like, it's beyond, because it's also uncomfortable and like super unfresh. It's just filthy and just dirty. It's just gross. But I see this. So the UK has a long ways to travel. In Sweden, that would be, I would say, unusual, at least, if not very discounted. You know, so should get rid of your dirty gear, and washing the outer gear and underwear, and go to shower. That would be standard. Like, every fire station has showers and saunas. Have it for years. Has nothing to do with saunas. Has nothing to do with decon. It's cultural that every fire station had a sauna, which is different things. But then it's probably also good for decon. That's a separate issue. Yeah, definitely that, this topic of, cleaning the gear, and we get to probably the good question about cleaning and decon, different things. But the cleaning, at least cleaning physically the dirt off, we started a long time, and now you're not going to go into a fire station in Sweden. I would guarantee you're not going to go into a fire station in Sweden now and find not cleaned gear after training or fire. That
Okay.
probably.
Good.
You wouldn't, you might feel it would be unusual if it smells like a fire after a fire in a fire station these days.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, things have improved tremendously in the UK, and
For sure.
I think, in recent times, I did a tour of some of the new stations and facilities at Hampshire Fire, and yeah, they have done an amazing job. They are really cutting edge environments for firefighters. Very, very good facilities. I was really impressed. But I'm still conscious, I suppose, that you've got some really remote parts of the UK, islands and so forth, off from the mainland, and the facilities are renownedly not wonderful. And at one extreme and the other, you've kind of got everything in between, let's say. But things are definitely on a
Yeah, but I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, because it's mostly procedure based. Like, if you're in a rural place, like say I don't even have water. Like, say, there's no way for me to shower. Okay, you have on the fire truck, you have of course, your PPE. You have your underwear on you, whatever you go in, and you have a second underwear with you in the fire truck. Like, it's very easy. It doesn't take a lot of space. You have a generic ones under the seat. You go to fire, you go into the fire, do whatever you like. After that, you decon, put it in bags, whatever it is, sort of airtight, preferably. Put it in a separate compartment, not with you. Take off your underwear, put it in a bag, separate compartment. Put on your clean new underwear, some wet wipes, and go do at least a gross decon. Go back in the fire truck, back to the fire station, deal with the problem. Sure, if you get a fire, get your gear out, put it on, but most likely that's not going to happen. So you just put it back. So I don't buy it like you don't have facilities and so on. Now, if you get back to station and there's, like, we can't wash our gear, I think that's the problem. Like, you shan't send that away and you have replacement gear. That should be, so that'd be a too low a standard. But I think 90% of all the gains is due to ignorance or laziness of firefighters just dealing with it. Like, there's nothing stopping that from happening.
And in terms of what's common in Sweden, and what do you do? And obviously, from a training perspective, it sounds like you've got the freedom to do what you want, how you want, and to some extent, what do you choose to wear for hot fire training, for example?
Well, if it comes to gear, so again, I like to start from outside in. The outside, I probably wear whatever that department I'm training with has to offer, because I can't have my own. Now, when I started doing training, I was offered gear by all different manufacturers to have as a trainer. But I don't have the infrastructure. Every time I do training, it should be sent for cleaning and stuff like that. I can't handle that. So I can't handle that infrastructure. So all of that gear is pretty much supplied by the fire service that I'm doing training with. So I'm for the outer shell. But if I had to pick myself, which I've also tried during the different times, I would have for first off, I want an overall. I want to, I don't want a 2-piece set. I want a 1-piece set with cuffs and my legs and arms, and I want an outer hood. Like, and there, the Viking had a suit a couple of years ago that was great. They discontinued it because probably just me wearing it. Like every firefighter wants a two-piece suit because they want to be able to take off the jacket and so on.
Yeah.
And for operational use, I buy that. But for training, I don't want all the gaps because they go like, well, there's a particle barrier in my suit. Well, yeah, sure. But your jacket and pants are an air pump and you're pumping stuff into it, and I don't want that stuff. At least I want it reduced. So like, and overall with that, and at least a lot of suits I have in Sweden, they have cuffs during their hands and legs at least, but they're open in the waist, and I don't like that. And again, I want the exterior hood. I remember I had a conversation with, it was a UK guy. He was very good at fire suits, and he was very like, oh, you shouldn't wear an outside hood, which, Sweden, we cover the helmet with a hood. It's an exterior hood. Sorry, some departments do. Some have inner hood, but it's still an extra hood. Because he was going, oh, you want the jacket to work as an air pump because you want to manage internal heat. And I go like, well, that's not my issue in fire. I want that heat that's outside to not come in. And I don't want now, which was the first argument I had, and then later on, I don't want the contaminants coming in. I don't want that heat pump. I want the exterior hood that protects my helmet and head and gives me insulation. So I wanted that, which I still think is a good design. I want it overall with an exterior hood. I think that's a good start. Now, if I can have it gas tight somehow, but still not like a chemical suit, that would be awesome.
Okay.
But yeah, you make gear, I believe. You make me an overall with an exterior hood, and you might have a customer.
Okay, I'll make a note.
So in that case, like, to have like that as a shell that protects me against for heat and so on. And just to be mentioned before we get to the underwear, next layer. That's for me is a fire suit. It's not a firefighter suit. It's not like something you wear to BA incidents and hazmats. Like, that's a fire suit. It should only be worn at structural fires. Period. It should not be easily breathable and lightweight because you're going to crawl inside a vehicle. No, that's a rescue suit. You should have a rescue suit. You should have maybe a wildland firefighting suit, and you should have a structural firefighting gear. Period. It makes no sense to wear a structural firefighting gear at anything else but structural firefighting. Not from a contaminants perspective, but also from like how you design the gear.
And in Sweden, just out of curiosity, more widely, is that the approach?
No.
Does a typical brigade have 3 different types of suits for 3 different types of risk and 3 different types of work?
It's becoming more common, but it's long way, and don't understand it. A lot of departments say, oh, it's too much a cost. No, it's the opposite. Like, investment cost may be more. Like you destroy, like, firefighting gear is not destroyed by firefighting. They're destroyed by washing and other types of events. That's that typically, because they're destroyed by UV light and all the other things. So, like, if you only use them for fire and wash them after fire, and a way that conserves the gear and so on, now you're going to wear that for much longer, and you have its dedicated rescue gear for anything else, which is much more comfortable and much more suited for everything else, and that will limit cost, because that's what you're going to work the most of the times you're going to wear is the rescue suit, because most calls are not structural fires. So I think that's a very important one, that it's not it may be initially as an investment to buy multiple suits, and it's a bit of a logistical problem, but it's overall time, it's just a cost saver. So, but sadly, I've been banging this drum in Sweden. It's not it's a kind of key issue for me, but I'd mention it anytime I can. It's, sadly, it's still not catching on.
Interestingly, in the UK, there's a tender that's live right now, actually, and there's a sort of a rescue suit and a fire suit. So it's basically giving 2 very separate pieces of PPE for very different risks, very different work. So hopefully that will be taken up quite widely. Yeah, it seems to be the way forward. Again, wildland suits, not every brigade has them. Some brigades have them. But clearly that risk is something that's you see right the way across Europe and the UK. There's more and more of these types of fires. And so when do you do training other than structural firefighting training? You don't do any rescue training? You don't do any other types of fire training. And
I have way much to do in fire to do anything else.
what about those undersuit layers? I mean, you've described this sort of coverall type suit with a hood, so I haven't seen such a thing, but I get the idea. You're trying to prevent
Yeah, it's like a
ingress at the
baby
most
suit, like with your small
fundamental level.
kids.
uh,
Like it's great because you don't get snow in between your pants and your waist. It's great.
and
No,
what comes next? What else have you got on there in a
yeah,
typical training session?
yeah, and below that, that's where my personal gear comes in, because typically, not always, it depends on the situation, but most of the times that's where I have my personal stuff. First off, for me, and I'm a comfortable guy. I want to be comfortable. I have multiple sets, regardless of what I have.
Sure.
Like if I do training, I go like I'm a diva. I would, if I'm doing training all day, I would probably 4 sets of underwear if I can, at least
really
2. Like
in one day.
yeah, because I sweat
That's
like a
fantastic.
pig. Like if I sweat like a pig and I'm going out of fire and I'm like wet and it's a lot of times it's cold and like I want to be comfortable, like change it, like nice. It's just if nothing else, just being comfortable. But also like at least have multiple sets, because not just for comfortable, regardless of what I have, any base layer I have is going to absorb particles and contaminants. So even if it's cotton, I always want long sleeves, long pants to have that extra layer that just absorbs things, because it's just a layer. It doesn't matter. Again, if it's cotton or wool or whatever, just from that perspective, I never want my skin to touch, if I can, the outer shell, because I deem the outer shell to be contaminated, more or less. Like especially gloves, for instance, they're like filthy, dirty gloves. So my base layer is my protection from my outer layer. That's how I will look at it. So again, I have long sleeves, long pants. I have, of course, socks or multiple socks, and then I have plastic gloves, or if I can't use that in some country because it's prohibited, at least cotton thin gloves.
Okay.
So I have one layer between me and my gloves, because again, gloves are just nasty. There's not it's very hard to get clean.
And do you have a preference fiber-wise for your base layer?
So for underwear, I started with sort of when I joined the fire service, it was a lot of synthetics, because of fireproof synthetics, because it's they claim to be breathe better and so on. I never liked them. I think they were uncomfortable. I sweat a lot, and when they get when I sweat, they get cold, and it's just uncomfortable. So I never liked them. The breathability was just what I said, crap. And it's just uncomfortable. So I never liked them. The breathability was just what I said, just crap. Nej, du får inte komma ner. Hej. My kid came home. I got a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old that wants to be with their daddy now.
Very nice.
But I'll join them later. So we no. So I started by that, and then personally, I always warm when it's cold, and it's basically cold when it's warm. Even when it gets wet, it doesn't get cold. So I've always loved wool. The Norwegians are the world champions of making good wool, different fabrics. They do, and early on, I got a card of Brynje, which is basically a mesh wool fabric, which is used by the army. There's nothing better for thermal regulation than mesh wool. It looks like the American called a wife beater, because it's got lots of holes. It looks like and if you're not like fit, it looks like like a poor cam. It's not a good look. But anyway, there's nothing better for thermal regulation than that, period. All the special forces around the world coming to Sweden and Norway to do Arctic courses, they end up buying those underwears because they are just superior.
Yeah.
So anyway, so wool, and especially combined with a mesh fabric, is the best. But just wool has always been a thing. But then after some time, I started getting worried. But when the contaminants started becoming a thing, I started to become worried that it was hard to wash the wool materials because of the intricacy between the fibers. It's hard to get rid of the contaminants. And that's probably true. it's hard to say, but it's probably true that it's harder to decontaminate wool than cotton. But there's been some studies in Norway and other stuff I looked at. And doesn't seem to be, the issue seems to be to get underwear just like the outer shell to be decontaminated anyway. It doesn't seem to be the problem that the specific material like wool is the big problem. So I don't see it, because you could definitely make an argument that it's easier to clean synthetics because the contaminants doesn't get entangled within the fibers as easy as wool. But I don't believe that to be a big issue. So I love wool, and that's, if I can, that's where I wear. Now, on top of that, when I started realizing, the thing is, we and which is sort of a new sort of terminology, washing compared to decontamination, because it was, it started to become apparent that we're washing stuff, and again, with Sweden was doing it for a fairly long time, washing them in probably better and better ways, at least. If you started using normal dishwashers and dishwashers for basically industrial dishwashers for go to gear, and normal clothes washing machines for PPE, and then gradually better detergents, better procedures, better cleaning cycles, dedicated machines. So we became better at cleaning them, washing them. But it became apparent that it wasn't enough. So again, like I said, I looked at, and I still look at, outer gear and gloves, anything as dirty, more or less, which means I need my underwear to protect myself from it. So the underwear is done. But of course, then I have my underwear, and I realized that my underwear is probably as hard to decon as the other thing. It's easier because it doesn't have those layers to get trapped between, like gloves and so on. Water
But at
gets
least if
trapped
you've
on the
got
inside.
4 sets, as you're saying, the way you deal with that to some extent is just by having a generous supply. You've got 4 sets. So any particular set is only going to take 25% of the contamination approximately over the course of a working day. So fundamentally, having a good supply of those things is clearly.
Oh, for sure.
I love it. Merino wool, for anyone who's involved in field sports or active sports in foul weather, it's just the best. It's a wonderful thing to do martial arts and boxing. It's wonderful. I see a boxing bag of some description behind your head there poking up.
No, that's my kids are boxing there. Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. Merino wool is the best.
I mean,
it's the best.
I've worn merino wool base layers sometimes for more than 10 years before they started to disintegrate, and they still retained color fastness and practically zero shrinkage. Really, really awesome fiber. But strangely in the UK, it's never really taken off. I mean, there's a bit of it about. There are some brigades that wear it, but most brigades tend to wear 100% cotton, poly cotton, cotton tactile, those type of fibers for their upper body base layer. Very few would be in.
Why do you think that's the case?
I mean, probably budget to some extent. I mean, superfine merino wool is relatively more expensive than those other types of fibers. Although I would say better value over the life of the product because it will last longer. So I'm a proponent in that respect. I also think psychologically, some people think that a wool base layer is going to be itchy to wear, and of course it isn't. Superfine merino wool is not itchy to wear unless you've got some
the
sort
most
of
comfortable thing to wear by far.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
it's so
look, a tiny percent of the population might have an allergy to wool, but they're going to be in a tiny minority. It's a natural fiber. But I think psychologically, people sort of think of itchy sort of jumpers that they wore as a child or something like that. Coarse wool and superfine merino wool is not coarse wool, so it's not itchy. So I think some people even have an idea that's not really fundamentally correct in terms of the comfort. So it's probably somewhat psychological and somewhat price would be my belief. I mean, I suppose you could also argue from a commercial perspective, if it hasn't been marketed well enough and people haven't been educated well enough, then that might be another reason too.
Yeah, no, I never see a sort of commercial saying that this is, wear wool is the best for you. It's more, like, oh, we have this technical blend of plastics that doesn't burn, and that's what you should wear. That's most of the times you hear sort of commercially pushed. No, it is that, but I see, and the same problem is, of course, for everyone. I'm into trainings. A lot of my sort of thoughts go back to like, what do I wear? Because I have all the time in the world to change gear. So it is. I mean, I go like, well, should you have merino wool, long sleeve, long pants, multiple gears for training? For sure. Like, because there's no read for, like, you're not in a rush to that. Like when it comes to station wear and so on, that's like that's of course, a big issue. And also, should you have merino wool for station gear? I would support that. I don't have a problem with that, and so on. But you go like, should you have long sleeves? Probably not when you're, every day,
Sure.
when it's warm and everything. There's of course, a balance between here. But to me, it's like it's not an either or. You go like, well, if sometimes have the time to take on long sleeves before we go to fire call, or especially when we do training, then you should wear long sleeves. If you're got a call middle of dinner and you just rush down, it's in the fire. Of course, you shouldn't take extra time to. You just wear whatever you have your station wear and hope it's clean and so on, and you wear that. So I think it's not an either or. You have to find a balance, of course, and infrastructure to work with that. But at least in that case, you should have multiple, extra wears on your fire truck. You would also, like in every fire truck in Sweden, there's probably, multiple sets of, brage underwear and those kind of things, whatever the material that underwear would be. And again, in my personal bag, which I would put on the fire truck when I was a firefighter, and it would be a merino wool underwear to replace it and so on. So I would have extra gear. So I could, if I do multiple wears on a fire, I can switch on after fire, I can take that on. So I'd have one. But again, and every department would have that generic stash under the bench in the fire truck or somewhere where you had that extra clean gear can get replaced. Again, I think that started even before contaminants were a thing. It was started because just comfort. Like if you go to a fire call and it's 10 below freezing, and you can go out from your first wear and get some water, get on. It's like you're a new person. If you get out, get up your wet T-shirt, get a dry T-shirt on, next, roll sleeve, take some water. I'm basically good to go again. Like, so it's such a cheap way. But I'm surprised. Like when I go training, and UK was not different. Like finding underwear is like finding a treasure someplace. Like it's sort of like, oh, you can get as many jackets as you like, PPE, but underwear, like, oh, you have to borrow someone's personal ones because there's no like generic ones to put out. Like if you go to a department in Sweden, most times there's like stacks of them. Like it's just like, here's 1,000 XL, here's 1,000 large. Like just pick one. Pick 4, you just bring them back when you're done. And I have not really figured out why that is. And like flash hoods, not talk about flash hoods. Flash hood, like finding a small diamond in the haystack somewhere, places you go. Like, no, I want 4 flash hoods during the day. I want to switch every time.
And are you wearing sort of particulate blocking flash hoods in Sweden nowadays? Is that common?
I don't know how common that is. I don't think that's very common still. I mean, because, well, first off, Sweden has dual hoods. So we have a flash hood and the exterior hood. Like we've always had, back to, the 80s, dual hoods. One from, PBI, whatever the material is in the outer shell, and one, cotton would be the normal one. And most people wear their cotton hood under the mask, which is also like heresy in a lot of places. So beard and a flash hood under the mask, and people are not dying like droves. So we would have that. And then particle hoods started to become like a thing. And I have nothing against particle hoods, nothing at all. I have multiple myself. I'm in the position where manufacturers sometimes give me stuff because they want to, brand stuff. So I have multiple ones, very comfortable. And to wear and so on. And they, of course, add another layer of protection. So I'm not against that at all. Now, I just switched to one, because particles, and I know this, there's UK companies, not going to mention names, I got trying to get into that, but like mention like, oh, this blocks all the contaminants and this protects you 100%. So no, it's a particle barrier. Particle barrier only works. First off, anything that gets around the particle barrier goes through. So it's like having on the outer shell, the particle barrier suit. Yes, maybe it doesn't go through the particle barrier, but it goes around it, and it goes around it for a lot. It's not nothing wrong to have it. It's just that it's not going to protect you 100%. Now, the base layer, if you have a particle barrier in your base layer, that's going to, of course, protect you a lot better because there's much less gaps. So great. Let's get around it. It's another layer. Great. But then it's a particle barrier, and tiny particles and gases gets through it. That's the whole point of having a particle barrier. And that doesn't seem to be a standard of, what's the vapor pressure it could sustain from liquids and so on. So everyone's claiming all around the world, we have a particle barrier. Basically, okay, well, a wooden plank is a particle barrier, if you want to call it that. Like, you can call anything a particle barrier, sort of. So for me, but it doesn't protect you against gases, and it doesn't protect you against tiny liquids or particles. So that's where, when a Swedish company, and this is actually an old technology, but the Swedish company started adapting an old technology of carbon fiber, active carbon shield, meaning if you can have a particle barrier in your PPE, and then you have a particle barrier in the outer shell of the underwear. Sorry, this now there are four pieces of material. But anyway, there's a particle barrier that traps most of the particles, large particles, liquids, and then whatever gets through the particle barrier gets trapped within the active carbon that absorbs the gases and everything. And that's, for me, that came sort of in the same time as particle barriers becoming more popular. And I just switched straight to that one because in my head it just go like click. If that works, it works. The only thing not the only thing, but one thing I was worried about when I started using that was, how long it's going to last, because it was very expensive. How long it's going to last, because active carbon is it only works until it's saturated. There is a potentially that you sort of regenerate it.
What do you, I mean, have you found from your own experience and your own training a saturation point?
No. Well, no, because first off, I haven't chemically, measured the penetration. I think the manufacturer of the Swedish set is looking for doing a really long-term usage during training and see how much protection do we get after 100, 1,000 burns.
Sure.
How much is actually, but what I can say is, like from anecdotally, if you do fire training, you smell bad afterwards. Like, and we talked about wool. I typically, most time, even in summer, when I do training, I have merino wool, and then I have this particle suit or this active carbon suit over the merino wool. So it becomes an extra big, and that is most of the reason for doing that is just because it's much more comfortable. Because that suit is, it's like a synthetic material. Like when it gets wet, it gets cold. When I have the merino base layer under, I get the best of two worlds. I get the merino wool, which is just super comfortable, even if it gets cold. I get an extra layer, but I also get sort of the particle barrier, the sort of active carbon on the outside. And again, when I just realized that.
It's kind of counterintuitive, though, isn't it, Lars? I suppose, that you're choosing to wear an additional next skin layer rather than just wearing the barrier layer with the activated carbon next to your skin. So you're actually introducing a third layer that,
again, I'm a comfortable guy. I like to be comfortable.
But I suppose most people might instinctively think wearing that extra layer is going to just add to some heat stress, but you're actually saying no, quite the opposite. This is making me more comfortable. It's important.
Yeah, but again, if I'm doing, if I'm doing road traffic collision training, that makes zero sense because all the heat is coming from inside. If I'm doing fire behavior training, like most of the heat is coming from outside, so in that case, it's just good. Like, you have to adapt it to what my conditions are. My conditions are when I go inside, it's going to be hot. It's going to be way hotter from outside than from inside. So that just adds comfortability for me. So in that case, again, I have the merino wool and I have the active carbon, and that anecdotally, I would get it to anecdotally, like I've been wearing mine for years now, and my underwear never smells, and I don't smell. It's not like I remember, when sitting in the sauna after fire training, and if I don't wear anything, in particular, just suited me, like you could visibly see like dirt coming out of your pores.
Sure.
Now, there is no scientific saying that, that dirt coming out is the thing that's causing you cancer. So now you're sweating it out. Nothing supports that.
Sure.
But there are at least that the thing that's happening here, but at least it's a visual that something get in and now it's getting out,
Yeah.
whether it's dangerous or not. Now there's pretty new Danish study, and I don't know if it's a Norwegian also one that just talks about the sauna being good for decon. So it's probably good for you to decontaminate. But if it's the sweating here, or if it's the kidneys are better at processing the contaminants, or how that's done, I don't know. But anyway,
you're saying though that when you wear this combination, superfine merino wool base layer, activated carbon mid layer, and then effectively a structural firefighting suit, but it's a one piece with a hood.
Well, ideally it would be. I don't wear that because there's no manufacturer makes one.
No, okay. So you're really wearing the structural firefighting suit that the brigade you're training with is providing you. But nonetheless, with that sort of mid layer and that sort of base layer approach, you're saying that you're coming out of a hard day's training and you don't smell the smoke.
No, I don't smell smoke.
Okay. Yeah, I mean
that's a noticeable difference. That doesn't indicate that I'm clean. There's nothing getting through, but it's at least an indicator that if I don't smell bad, it's probably less getting through, and hopefully that's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good indicator, and pretty transformative. I mean, I don't believe in the UK at this point in time that approach is remotely common to choose a superfine merino base layer and mix it with an activated carbon.
Traveling around, a lot of. I mean, I went to I did a course in the fire college and people and some other places, but the college, and people brought their own gear, and a lot of people just had their station wear during training. And I was going like, why would you do that? That was not part of the course. I mean, there was not something talked about, but it's something I noted. Like, why would you go into your station wear, go into a CFBT style, live fire training, go outside, don't change to anything else, and then some of them rode home like 4 hours trip back home, same stuff.
And yeah, in the UK, that's probably a poly cotton trouser, which is, not exactly comfortable. It's okay, but it's not good for moisture management or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and when I went, I didn't bring my own. Like in that case, I didn't have the energy to fly with the gear, so I took whatever the college had to offer. I was provided a base layer with a particle barrier, which they were trialing. And nothing wrong with that, and so on. So I just wear that, and I had multiple sets, which I changed between because I kindly asked the instructors to provide me more gear, and so they did because like they want to honor your guest. But again, the note was that the people who work there and the people who, especially those who came in, that lack of, I don't know, ignorance or laziness or whatever, not recognizing that we are saturating that cotton wear, whatever it might be, with contaminants, and now you're wearing it for more time than you need. That's not a good thing. And again, to me, it's not black and white. If you do that once, no big problem. Like it's a time and saturation thing. So if you just try to minimize it, am I scared to go inside a container, doing something without a breathing apparatus on? No, I'm not scared. But if I do it every time, it's gonna, probably get me cancer. But if I do it sometimes, at least I delay it. Like it's not black and white.
I think it's an area the UK needs to improve on. I mean, it's great to see the new sort of NFCCC tender, specifying better structural suits and better rescue suits and so forth. But there isn't really a unified approach in the UK in terms of station wear, and
they shouldn't be. But I don't like central.
Back to your.
If you're going to make a new standard for suits for Britain, you better be happy that there's no development in materials or anything else for the next 25 years because you've got to get stuck with it. And it's a stupid thing to do. No, don't make it a centralized thing. Make it regional, make it local. Just what you can do centrally is provide up-current research for the local ones to decide. So it would be great if you have a center of excellence that looked at this and looked at the best thing we have right now is merino wool and active carbon suits. In 5 years, it might be something different.
Yeah, that's
and you shouldn't have a standard that says, "Oh, we can't choose the best things on the market because the standard says X." It's stupid.
I think in any long-term contract, that sort of innovation clause is highly useful to all concerned. Okay, so you're not a big fan of standards, but I'm going to ask your opinion of another one. So, we haven't had an international standard really for care and maintenance of PPE, and more recently, their ISO 23616 from 2024. Have you sort of engaged with that standard much? Is that standard being embraced in Sweden? How do you feel about it? I mean, I know once it's a published standard, right now there's not a kind of an audit process for it or a certification process, and undoubtedly that will come. But what's your view on that piece of?
Well, first off, before on that particular stand again, like you said, am I a big fan of standards overall? No, because again, they tend to become sort of inadvertently like laws. Like if you don't follow the standard, you might be liable for things, and that's fine as long as the standard's good.
Mhm,
And it might be that it started out good, but it eventually will go old, and then you're following a standard that makes no sense. So standards are highly problematic. The other things about standard is they're decided by the industry and not by the user base,
mhm,
because it's only the industry that has the incentive to be part of a very lengthy process to develop the standard.
mhm,
And
mhm.
most user base doesn't have the time, the resources, or the incentive, the mandate to do it. Like a
Mhm.
local fire brigade doesn't have the like thou shalt be part of a national standard committee.
Yeah, sure.
No, it's not part of their job description. So standards tend to be written by the loudest voices in the room,
Mhm, mhm.
which a lot of times is the ones who have the most money to pour into it, which tends to be the
Yeah,
manufacturers. So it's a
yeah, sure.
manufacturer battle, and a lot of decisions are not made for the end users; they're made to improve competitiveness for that company.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
want this
Definitely
standard
something
because
that needs
we,
more balance, for
yeah.
sure.
So with that said on standards, of course, there's an upside. If there's no standards, it's very easy for politicians to cut funding because there's very little to point on.
Mhm, mhm.
So a lot of good things have happened due to standards, saying that
Yes.
the fire chief can go and look at the standard here for protective gear. If we don't follow it, we're liable for a lawsuit, and now we can
Mhm,
get more funding from politicians, for instance.
mhm,
So of course, there's a lot of good things happening towards the standard. I could argue that if you have a best practice that really is best practice, like if you have a center of excellence in the UK that deals with fire, and they come up with a recommendation in how the base layer should be functioning and then detailed. If there is if there was no standard, let's say for that, and there would be a lawsuit. If it's a recognized center of excellence, it would probably weigh very heavily.
mhm, mhm. I don't know if
That
you've
is
come across it, Lars. There's the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland, which I am an alumni of, has a project called Intox Fire. I'm not sure if you've come across this, and this is about sort of particulate ingress in fire PPE and contamination and removal of contamination. Yeah, I was very pleased to get invited to join their expert panel recently, and so I've joined, and we started engaging with that organization. I think there's going to be some very interesting results, but the reality is, it's a study that's going to run into 2027, so it'll be a while before we see a publication from it. And yeah, very good webinars and so forth, and debates and interaction happening along the way as they progress
great,
forward in that. It,
fantastic.
yeah, I'll maybe ask one of my colleagues to send you a link to Intox Fire from the University of Ulster, just out of curiosity.
I love the. I think there should be when I see a healthy system, I see a disorganized system. Like
Hmm.
that's my philosophy, meaning that there should be research done here, there should be a center over here, should be here and here, and basically it's a battleground of ideas, and the best things should pop up. Now that's the ideal situation. There's a lot of struggles with that, but this tendency to sell, it's like only if we centralize this decision making, then we will reach this ultimate. This look now, like no, that's there's no evidence for that. It's like, oh, if I were in charge, then it would be good. That's what people are saying when they say centralized. If everybody did it the same way as I did it, then it would be good. Because that's what people are saying. They're not saying let's centralize this because it would be great if someone else could decide what I'm supposed to do. No, that's not what they're saying, because the compromise is not a fun thing. It means that nobody gets
Yeah.
to do what they want. So is there anything in that study? Because not my area of expertise. I've read this study for some time ago. No, the sort of the ISO standard, or at least the outlines of it. Is there anything in the particular there where you know what my thoughts on?
No, no, just is it being implemented as a best practice in Sweden? Do you see it? I mean, it talks about. I mean,
I
it's one
think
of
that
those
most of the
things
fire
that,
departments have no idea that it exists.
yeah, it doesn't seem to be as widely known or talked about in the UK as I would have expected, or thought, given that it's published in 2024. I think it's still not well enough understood or has been read. In fact, recent NFCC tender. I mean, I guess the most interesting thing from my perspective is, it is sort of delineating to some extent the difference between washing and decontamination and aqueous-based technologies and non-aqueous-based technologies, and the potential to use new technologies like liquid carbon dioxide, rather than only washing, because right now in the UK everybody is simply washing,
Yeah,
and
which is probably true for most places. Yeah.
yeah, uh-huh. I mean,
It's only a very few departments I've ever heard of liquid carbon cleaning.
yeah, look, I mean, it's growing in North America. It's growing in Europe, and I can see the first signs of it starting to happen in the UK as well. I have to say, in the Republic of Ireland, it's quite widely used. I think it's something like over 60% of the Republic of Ireland is now access
Oh, wow,
to
that was way
through
more than I thought. Yeah.
to contracts, yeah, to liquid carbon dioxide. So it's becoming normal. Many brigades have even sort of swapped out aqueous-based washing for LCO2, so they get a clean and a decontamination all at the same time. But yeah, I mean, from a technology perspective, that's something that I'm very interested in. But what about you, Lars? Just sort of as we get to the end of our chat, technology wise, hot button issues, things that you're passionate about. Is there anything else that you see that's coming along that's going to be game changing? Anything that's concerning? Any thoughts of those types?
Well, it's a wide question. Well, first off, in terms of gear, I think it's exciting that like technology like liquid carbon dioxide is being implemented, and saying that we can get things that are contaminated, less contaminated, or even sort of clean. That's of course great. How often that should be done, I have no idea. And how to measure not being clean is a
Hmm.
huge issue. Like
Sure.
how you judge when it should be sent. Like there's many issues, but it's for core because we've been washing gear with very uncertain results and probably not good enough results for a lot of years. Improving washing, which and washing will of course be still an important part of the decom process. You need to get rid of dirt and blood and whatever it might be. Get rid of gear, and you can do that probably much better than we all have teams to do. Like less damaging for the gear and still getting cleaner. So I think that that's. But of course, a big thing is that if you can clean it without degrading the gear too much, that's a huge issue, because cleaning is destroying gear way more than actual wearing the gear is.
Yeah, again, I don't know how widely that is understood, but it's something that I've seen and experienced and have lived. Just how damaging water-based washing can be to
It's
kit, and it's evidential even after one wash. You can see shrinkage and color loss, and
Yeah, but
after a few
I've
washes.
been doing fire training for a lot in Sweden, and there's not a training center in Sweden that doesn't have totally washed out gear for training, and
Uh-huh,
the protection level is of course much lower. I don't see this
uh-huh,
as a big issue.
uh-huh,
Again, I deem the outer shell to be a thermal protection, not really. Of course, it protects against contaminants, but that's not the main issue. They're thermally and mechanically protecting me, and then I have my base layer that's sort of I look at health wise protecting me against contaminants.
uh-huh.
So that's sort of I look at it in my head now. So I think that is a good thing. Now, when it comes to technology overall, I am in one hand I'm saying I think there's a lot of it that's sort of back to basics. So we have if I look at a crystal ball, and if I were the magician who makes the magic wand, I would buy fire trucks that you could repair with steel thread and tape. Like, I would get rid of all the touch screens and everything like that on fire trucks and everything, because we need robustness. We shouldn't have electric fire trucks. It's just nonsense. We need to get back to basic, because the fire service should be the last stop and everything. So it has to be cheaper, because fire trucks are way too expensive now. So they need to be cheaper and more robust, and we need to have way more of them. So if one breaks, we just take another one. And if there's a war and those kind of things, civil unrest, we need multiple ones. Like Ukraine has lost like 1,700 fire trucks or something in the war so far. So we need technical simplicity at one hand. So like technical simplicity, we just need a fire pump and wheels and motor. We don't need just all the other gadgets and whistles. That's, you can do a lot with just a normal fire pump and wheels and a motor.
Another counterintuitive response, Lars.
Yeah, but maybe it is, but not to me.
I wonder how widely shared that view is. I certainly haven't heard it before.
Not at all. Not at all, probably. But most people are not me. No, I think that's I think that's a need, because we have, like, I remember, when we had an aerial in my fire station, and it was always out of service because there was some sensor somewhere that made a false alarm. And then we had a backup German ladder, a M.B.E. ladder truck, which is just, everything was basically mechanical. There was some sensors, but you could go down to local shop and burn and get another similar relay or sensor to fit it. That's what the fire should be. That's what the fire service should be. And because when we have supply demand problems and everything is based around a semiconductor somewhere when that semiconductor fails, everything fails. Like, that's not acceptable. That doesn't work. That's not, that doesn't look at the fire service as what it should be, like the last stop. Now, with that said, I think that there will be a trend. I hope there will be a trend that go back to technical robustness and simplicity. On the same time, I don't see issue that the fire service needs to be more technical savvy. And we need to be embraced, like for AI and robotics. Of course, we need to adopt that. And I don't see any problem with joining things. We should have a fleet of simple, technically reliable, simple to operate fleet, and we should have super advanced robotics and AI supporting it. But when that fails, you don't have semiconductors, we should still be able to operate.
Yeah.
So I think, of course, and I see if I had more, brain power over, I would definitely look at AI for communication. So communication is always a problem on the fireground and between fireground and command and so on. And I'll put AI in the center of that, because that's the only solution I see really that should be able to discern what is vital information and for whom. Because we don't have, but that's the problem we have. We're trying to teach our people, say which information is important to whom and how to get it there. And that's super hard to get through. And we get time delays and inefficiency. I think if we got put cameras and mics everywhere, AI would figure out which information is needed for which role. I don't think, in my head, it wouldn't even be that hard looking at what I can do with AI today, with just, Google AI or OpenAI and so on. For communication, AI is going to be huge. Of course, also for AI, other parts of AI and robotics. And robotics will in 10 years, I would assume that my colleagues half of them are humanoids, unless something major has happened that makes sure we can't manufacture humanoids, so they've killed everyone. Unless that happens, I would assume that a lot of firefighters will be humanoids, and in 20 years, there won't be any firefighters doing physical works. I think that the only thing that stops that is that there will be a huge unwillingness for the fire service to adopt those things for lots of reasons, but I don't see why that shouldn't happen. The fire service should be one of the first, companies, authorities, or adopters of humanoids, just as the police and the military will be early adopters, or should be. Now that, Orwell 1984 is clinging well on with this dystopian, but it's just this. So I think the technology of AI and robotics will, unless we do something major that hinders that will play a part.
That's the way forward.
yeah, I don't see myself doing fire training with humans in 20 years. I can't see how that would even remotely be possible unless the world crashes and so on. So I think those two are my main ones, and other types of robots too. But it's the humanoids that will really revolutionize the fire service in that sense. So those are technologies I'm looking forward to.
Lars, thank you very much for those closing insights. Very, very interesting and thought-provoking. I've really enjoyed chatting to you today, and thank you so much for being kind with your time. And hopefully we'll get to connect again.
Yeah, sure. Thank you,
Cheers,
Simon.
man. Take care.